Hello, I'm Cheryl Meyer, and I'm otherwise known as Cheryl M. Health Muse. And what my goal is to inspire you to lead a healthier life. So when I proposed my podcast, I proposed that we present it in two different segments. The first one is It Feels Good to Feel Good, Future Proof Your Health, where I get to share everything I have learned to return my health back to relative wellness and to live a pain-free life in spite of the fact that I have autoimmune disease. But the second part of my podcast is this episode, and that's Tell Me Your Story, the Health Muse is in. My concept with this is it's all fine and well that you hear me tell my story, but I get a lot of, it's all fine and well that it worked for you, but it's not going to work for me. And I wanted you to hear that there are lots of people out there that have made changes in their lifestyle that have supported their health and brought them back to relative wellness. We all have a couple things in common. We all owned our own health. Whatever the doctor was suggesting we did was going on a parallel path to us making these lifestyle changes where we did things that cleaned up our toxic load. We all pay attention to our body. You'll hear jazz in the background because I want you to listen to the rhythm of your health, and I want you to pay attention to what your body is telling you. My body had been trying to tell me that I was going to topple over into toxic load for some time. I just wasn't listening. So if you clean up your lifestyle and if you listen to your body, you have a very good chance not of being deprived in any way, but returning to feeling darn good. And that's what these podcasts are really all about. So thank you for joining me. This is going to be a Tell Me Your Story, the Health Muse is in episode, and I hope you enjoy it. And I hope that we all inspire you to lead a healthier, happier life. Thank you. Welcome to another edition of Tell Me Your Story. And I have a fabulous guest today. Her name is Shawna Cale. I just finished reading her book. What I love about her book is we come to all the same conclusions about health, but we come to them from totally different perspectives and points of view. So we should have a really good conversation that all of you will learn from and be able to implement for your own health. But I want Shawna to tell her own story to you, but I do want to tell you what the name of her book is. It's Bye Bye Normal, Hello Exceptional, and I love the title of the book, and that's the thread that goes throughout her book. She is now living an exceptional life, which is fantastic, and health brings an exceptional life. So everybody listening to this, I want you to pay attention to the conversation because there's no reason that you can't be living an exceptional life, no matter where your health is today. So welcome, Shawna. I am delighted to have you here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl, so much for inviting me. And yeah, I would love to share a little bit about how I came to the conclusion of having the title Bye Bye Normal, Hello Exceptional. So I don't know about you or other people out in the world, but I just wanted to live the normal life, the normal American dream, right? I came from a family that got divorced when I was 12 years old. Actually, the first time I was even younger than that, but most of my friends' parents were not divorced. So that didn't seem very normal to me. So when I looked for a husband, right, my whole goal was to not ever get divorced because I wanted to live the normal life. And as I was living my life, and I'm going to be honest here, as an adult, I have had pretty much a wonderful life in the sense of everything I ever wanted, I had. Okay. I went to college, the college I wanted to go to. I picked a guy my first day of my freshman year and ended up marrying him, right? So I had my first child at the age of 25. He is about to be 25 years old. Later had a daughter who's now 20, and I have a son that's 14. So the things that I wanted, my husband and I wanted to have our own physical therapy clinic. We got it. The problem wasn't the outside world, it was my internal world. So even though I had everything I'd ever dreamed of and wanted, inside, I didn't feel very good. And I felt guilty for not feeling very good about things. And later, after I had my third miscarriage in a 10-year period, so my life wasn't perfect, I had issues. Um, I realized that the things that the doctor would tell me was normal, what people would tell me was normal, um, wasn't necessarily what I wanted in my life. And I say that because if you have ever gone to the doctor and been told how you're feeling is normal, you think, well, if that's normal, I can't really research anymore, right? This is just the way it is. Or I can't change anything because this is just the way it is. And so I just started listening to what the world say. We want normal, right? We want to live this wonderful normal life.
Tell us that our test results are normal.
Or normal, yes.
Don't tell us is they're normal for all the people that they're testing who may have what's wrong with you. But
Exactly.
the test results don't show that because you're in normal range.
Right. Well, and that's the conclusion that I came to after my third miscarriage. I was lying in an ambulance, right? And the paramedic is putting electrodes on my chest. And I'm realizing at that moment, like, I am close to death, right? Like, I have been a physical therapist at this point, almost 30 years at the time, almost 20 years. I knew what they meant. Like, I've been in the medical field. And even after my doctor saved my life and stuff, he came into my room at the hospital and he said to me, you know, this is just normal. And it was the third miscarriage I'd had. He was always my doctor. And he said that. And I thought, how is lying in an ambulance at the age of 39, almost dying, how is that normal? And here's the little thing that was going through my head at the time. I had a neighbor that was the daughter, the same age as my daughter, who was dealing with cancer. Okay. I had a friend that had a daughter that had cancer. And for my kids, cancer was becoming normal, right? Like kids walking around without any hair. I loved that they did not judge them, but to them, that had become normal. Cancer in children should not be normal. Okay. Every day I would go to work and I would see one more person that had diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease on their list and all these prescriptions. And that was good health and that was normal. And I'm like, normal is highly overrated. Like, if this is normal, I want something else. And that's when the word exceptional kind of popped in my head. I really don't even know where it came from. Like, did the Lord put it in there? Was it my oldest son's spelling word because we homeschooled? All I know is it became a beacon for me, and I decided that's what I wanted. I wanted something more than normal. And people today, and I know I get it, we are going through the COVID world and people are like, I just want things to get back to normal. Normal is not all that great, right?
I don't think we're ever going back to whatever normal was. There'll be a new normal, but
Right. And the thing is, we get to choose what we want our life to be like. And you know what? If you want normal, if you want to walk the road of disease, then that's the road you can follow. We have a free world, but I don't know very many people that are choosing that.
one of the things that amused me about your title is I have become convinced, and it certainly was true of me, most people don't even know how lousy they actually feel
Yeah.
because it is normal.
Yeah.
Their doctors don't react to it, and you only get 4 to 5 minutes with your conventional doctor when you go to see them, and they just don't identify that they're really feeling lousy and that that does not have to be the way they have to live.
Right.
So that when you start to deal with that and take the power back away from your doctor and own it yourself, exceptional is a possibility that you never even knew was out there.
Right. You know something, Cheryl, I think that's really interesting. And I think we both have talked about this in the past is like inflammation, right? People go to the doctor looking for a diagnosis. And I get that we want an answer, right? But here's the thing, if our CRP levels are 1 or below, that is considered optimal, right? Like you have very, very little inflammation, but your CRP levels have to be like a 10 or above before the doctor's going to give you a diagnosis.
Yeah,
My
that
question
should
is,
be disease before you get a diagnosis.
yeah. So my question is, what's between 2 and 9? how many years are between 2 and 9? How
That's
do
the
people
travel towards
feel?
that terrible disease.
Yes. And so my goal is to help people see like there is so much we can do between the 2 and the 9, right? And even after the 10, like if we take the time to do some of these things, which some people call self-care, but I look at as really just daily care, right? I mean, think about a baby. We feed our babies, right? We make sure they get what they need. That we don't call that self-care. That's taking care of our child, right? But ourselves, we need to do the same. We
Yeah.
need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
One of the big reasons I got autoimmune disease was because I was working 24/7 and I was not taking care of myself at all. But to go back to one thing, when I got sick, my cortisol was so low, I was almost to Addison's disease. And
Yeah.
my conventional doctor was, "What's to do? You're not diseased."
Yeah.
When I got to my functional doctor, she went, "Oh, there's a lot we're going to do. We're going to fix this right away." Because why wait until you can't reverse it?
Right.
I don't have pain. I still have autoimmune disease. I can't reverse the autoimmune disease, but I don't have to live with the consequences of it anymore. But I would
Exactly.
have loved to have fixed it before I got there.
Right. And I think that so often as women, we are so busy taking care of everybody else that we don't even realize that we need to take the time to take care of ourselves. So here I was lying in an ambulance, right? He's asking me this, he's putting these electrodes, and I asked the question, should I start praying for myself? Like, I was so worried about everybody else that I wasn't even aware that I needed to be taking care of myself in something as simple as prayer. But that's kind of how I had gotten to that place, right? That everything just built on. And I was living at, you call it a toxic level, which I do too, because I was full of all kinds of toxins. But stress is a toxin, and
Right.
most women don't even realize how stressed they are because those toxins are actually stressing our body out. So I just use the one word stress, but really it's the toxins, it's the emotions, it's the physical stress that we put on ourselves, like working 24/7,
And there's a
right?
whole bunch of things that impact health. Stress
Yes.
is one of them. Lack of
Yep.
7 hours of continuous sleep is
Yes.
one of them. Anxiety is one of them.
Yep.
What I call toxic lack of exercise. I never liked to exercise. Guess what? That helped make me sick. And then I was in a toxic relationship when I got sick.
Yep.
You did not have that because you had a very happy marriage. But I was in a relationship. He was great in some ways, but he actually looked at me when I got sick and said, "I don't like it that you're sick." Well,
Yep.
guess what? He couldn't be in my life because I needed a partner who wanted to go on a get well journey with me. And all of that contributed, in addition to all the physical toxins in my life, to
Yep.
the fact that I went over toxic load. All of that impacts the gut.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I was at. I say that in 2009, before I had my third miscarriage in 2010, I would wake up in the morning, and I seriously would say this to my kids, like, I'm already up to here with it. Like, I would wake up to here with it. I didn't know what up to here was. Now I realize it was all the toxins and the stress that were in my body, which meant I had about this much that I could handle for the day, right? Well, when you have a life, unless we put ourselves in a bubble, right? If we have a life, things are going to happen,
Always.
right? And so I would say what I call flip my lid, right? Because I was done. And what I have found over the last 10 years on my journey is by taking the time to do these things, I call them my fill my cup type of things, is that no longer do I have my body full of toxins, right? All the toxins that we just talked about. But now I have all this space to handle life, right? So when something happens, I'm able to handle it. And that's really what I want to teach people is how to be able to handle the things that are going to come up. We're going to always have storms, right? I actually live here in Oklahoma. We're known as kind of the tornado place. Spring is here, right? But if we are prepared and we know that the storms are going to come, we're okay. And so helping people understand that living an exceptional life is taking the time. I have a formula, it's called the exceptional formula, but taking the time, and that doesn't really, it's just a lot of times replacing things, right? Taking the time to really take care of yourself. But for me, I have 3 children. Like I said, my oldest is about to be 25, my daughter's 20, my youngest is 14. And I realized that the example that I'm setting is going to affect them.
Right.
So when they leave the house, are they going to take care of themselves, or are they going to overdo things like we just talked about? You working 24/7, me taking care of everybody, doing all the things, right? Because I got to be superwoman because I had to prove my worth, which goes back to my own, inner child inside that I thought I had to do to be worthy of love, to do to be worthy of being the mom to these wonderful children, to the point that, as I said, I was done
Yeah.
before I could even start my day as a wife,
I
mom, or
just
physical
have
therapist.
2 podcasts for children's health. 54% of our kids have a chronic illness.
Yeah.
So I want to take it very seriously and I want to share with people. But one of the things I talk about are children are little pictures. Whatever they observe from you is
Yeah.
who they will become as adults. So
Yeah.
if you eat healthy, they will eat healthy. It's not about being influenced by all the other children at school, because if you eat as a family and you instill healthy eating habits
Yeah.
and you eat healthy, yeah, they will probably try some things as they grow, but they will mimic you as adults because that's what you're setting. Same thing with self-care. If you're not taking care of yourself, they don't have a role model for that. And
That's right.
self-care, if you don't take care of yourself, you don't have anything for anybody else.
Right. And they see that and they think that's the way life just is, like, oh, well, for my daughter, that's what being a mom is like. You put everybody else before yourself, right? You don't put the mask on, right? When the oxygen mask come down, you don't put it on, you put it on them first, right? Which we know they tell you on their plane that's not what you're supposed to do. But as moms, that's so often what we do. And we think if we're not, that we're being selfish or that we're not giving them what they want, but we're not realizing, like you said, we're not teaching them the skills that they need when they leave the house, right? And so here my daughter at that time, she was like 10, 11 years old, and I'm realizing she's going down that same path. She's going to feel the same way about herself, right, as I feel about myself, because that's what I'm teaching her. And I did not want her to go down that path. So I knew that not only was my journey about my journey, my health journey was also about the health journey of my family. It's a health journey of other women that I'm, in contact with, like, not to put the pressure on myself to be the example, but to put the know all that I am influencing others because they are around me. And do I want that on my shoulders, right? Like you said, if my daughter is walking down a path towards the disease, I have to ask myself, did I lead her in that direction? I'm her mom, right? Same thing with my boys. And so, yeah, as they're adults, they're going to get to start making the decisions for themselves. And if you haven't been making good decisions for yourself, chances are they're not going to be making good decisions for
Right.
themselves either.
Right. And yeah, we talk about all the same things, the importance of gratitude. I do it every morning
Yeah.
because it sets my day off on a positive note. And so, and it takes me a moment to get quiet and appreciate
Yeah.
all the great things I have in my life so that I manifest more great things because I start my day with that in mind.
Yeah.
All those things. And I just read a great quote on self care. Self care is anything that brings you pleasure.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as sitting and loving your I have 2 new kitties that are just a
Mm-hmm.
year old this month. It could be just as simple as sitting and giving them love. That brings me pleasure. That is self-care.
Right.
But you have to take the time to get quiet, recognize it, appreciate it, and
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. I agree completely. We live in a world that we are so busy. That goes back to my normal, right? That we are so busy doing all the things that we're really not doing the simple things that can bring us pleasure, that does bring us health, that does give us the life that we say that we want, right? We say, well, I'm doing all these things because I want this life. And I hear so often, as a physical therapist for so many years, I'd hear my patients say, well, you don't understand. My life is just too busy to take care of my health. And I'm like, but without your health, you don't have a life.
Right.
And so we kind of have it backwards, when we start taking care of ourselves, and I say ourselves in a self-care way, in a healthy way, really like we take care of our children or our babies, right? Like we make sure they get enough sleep. We make sure they get enough food. We make sure they get enough love, right? And that time, that touch, all those things. When we are given that to ourselves, when we're allowing ourselves to have that, right? Our lives just happen to happen, right? Like we start making those choices in our life and we're living it. And it's amazing, or as I put, exceptional, because we are choosing, and that really is the word, choosing the road we want to go down. And we're not just going on the default road.
In fact, somebody asked me at a conference, what was the best thing that ever happened to me? And I said, amazingly enough, it was getting autoimmune disease because it made me stop. And there's nothing about my life today that's the same as it was before I got sick. And what I want to communicate to other women is don't get sick and tired of being sick and tired before you make these changes. But yeah, I have a whole new perspective. I have a much healthier relationship. I met a man who wanted to go on a get well journey with me, who is my soulmate and my complete partner. I take time for myself now. I eat right. I was eating for, and I was so addicted to sugar that when I did my first sugar detox, I was sick in bed for a week with like a horrific flu. I had no idea how addicted I was until I went to break it. And my whole life, I thought I had no willpower, and that's why I couldn't lose weight. Ends up, it was my addiction that turned off my hormones in the back of my neck that controlled hunger. It's been such an adventure to learn all this. If I weren't 72, I'd go back and become a biochemist because I'm fascinated with all of it.
Yeah.
What I have learned is we do have more power over our bodies than we realize. No matter where our health is, there are things we can do if we take it back. And it doesn't mean we don't need our doctors, because we do, but we don't give them all our power. They are not what in retail, in my store manager days, we called the who said of the greatest magnitude. They
Right.
don't know everything. They are not God, but you know your body and they're not living in it. So start to get quiet, listen to your body. It's very smart and it will tell you if you're doing the right things or not.
Yeah. And that was for me to go back to just asking those questions, because you are so often we are searching. I was on a search between probably 2005 or 6 to 2010. I was on a search to find, who could fix me because I was broken, right? And all the different things that I thought someone was going to tell me, and all they would tell me was I was normal, which then just made me feel like, well, there's something wrong with me because I'm normal and I'm not happy, right? Like I should be joyful if I'm normal, and all the things that I thought normal would bring. But like you said, I mean, we are on this road and we get to choose. For me, if I hadn't done the maker's diet that my naturopath had recommended me to do, I wouldn't have known I was a sugar addict either. Because if anybody had asked me, which I share in my book, I would have said, there is no way I do not have ding dongs and Twinkies in my house. I can't be a sugar addict, right? We didn't go and bring all the things in all the time. But the sugar was in my everyday normal food that we live on. And here in America, the standard America diet.
Which
Yeah,
is
sad. Yeah. So when she started walking me through this process, I was like, she's telling me pretty much by 10 o'clock in the morning, I've had my sugar, I'm on a sugar overload already by 10 a.m. And I thought I was making good choices, right? But again, they were back to the normal. And I was kind of like you on day 5. I was laying in bed, I was shaking. I thought I was the woman on the rehab TV shows that they would have for like the elite people, they would show these shows and they're all shaky and everything. And my husband's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't know, but this diet is not working for me. He's saying, go for a walk. And I'm like, I don't want to do anything. Like, I just thought, one, I'm going crazy. Two, like I might die type thing. And when I came to the conclusion, all because I made, this is one thing I like to share with people. Most people would look at it as I went on a 40-day diet before my 40th birthday. And I don't even like to call it a diet. We call it a diet because that's what it is. It's a change, right? But it was eating real food. That's
right.
really all it was.
I don't diet, I eat real food. It's
right. It was just eating real food, but it teaches you in 40 days how to eat real food. Right. But most people would look at day 5 as a failure for me. On day 5, when I was walking back home, one of the little girls down the street asked me if I wanted a mini cupcake. And my friends and my neighbors didn't know that I was doing this no sugar, more or less no sugar diet. You could have 2 tablespoons of honey a day. And let me tell you, I was making sure I got my 2 tablespoons of honey some way or another. And still didn't even put together that I really thought you just need that for energy, right? Like, not because I was a sugar addict. And she gave me that cupcake and I stuck the thing in my mouth. And it was amazing how quickly I got this high and how quickly I got the fall, right? And I walked into my house and I went to my computer, sitting right where I'm sitting right now, and I wrote a poem, I'm an addict, because it was this eye-opening moment. And I don't look at me eating that little cupcake as a failure. I look at that as a win, because it was at that moment my eyes were opened to the real me, the one that was addicted to sugar.
And that's what's feeding the addiction. You go high,
Exactly.
the oxytocin's there, then you drop low. And what I didn't realize, it turns off all your other feel-good hormones.
Yes.
Your dopamine, your insulin, your GABA, your
Yeah.
serotonin, they all turn off because of this addiction to sugar with these
Right.
shots of oxytocin that are going through your body.
And you're constantly going to that sugar to get that little high, but it only lasts a few seconds. And that rest of the time that you're, trying to use your willpower not to eat anything or do anything, you're miserable, right? And then you're like, oh, well, then I, have my ice cream and now I'm happy again for a whole 5 minutes. And then I'm miserable for the next 3 hours, right? And so, yeah, I love that you share. I mean, I love, yeah, the biochemistry of everything. For me, I was so medically minded to make some of the changes I had to make. I had to kind of go, we got to look at this a different way, because I never knew how emotions affected pain. Like, as a physical therapist, I thought the only way I could help somebody was, physically with exercise or manual therapy. And when I had my own, I share in my book my own personal story of 20 years of pain that was removed by releasing an emotion. And if you had told me before 2010 that was even possible, I would have told you you are crazy. I would have told you there is no way. But luckily, I got to go down that path. And not only have I got to help myself releasing some pain in other areas, because our emotions can be trapped in different areas of our body. Helping other people do the same has been amazing, because sometimes we don't look at our bodies. We don't look at ourselves. I don't even say bodies. We don't look at ourselves as we really are spiritual, emotional, and physical beings. And all three, when they're connected, it's beautiful. It's exceptional, right? When those three things are not connected, when they are separated, where most people are living in the normal world, right? That's when we have this chaos. That's when we are having this anxiety. That's when we're having this, isn't there something more? And then we go look for the more, typically in here in America, towards sugar or some other type of drug, whether, it's alcohol or it's even prescription drugs or illegal drugs, or sometimes it's something like pornography. I mean, most people today have some type of addiction, something that they go to make them feel better that isn't good for them. And so, yeah, in my book, I walk through my own story. So the first 4 chapters is my own personal story, which was hard. I'm very raw and vulnerable in it, as you had said. And but I had to walk that path. I had to let go. And I will tell you this, Cheryl, I never knew the freedom that I would feel by sharing my story.
Right.
Even before I started getting the feedback back from people, but just finally sharing the me that was inside, that the me that was feeling, and thinking that I was alone, like I was the only person in the world that felt that way. And to realize in the last 10 years, as I was working on the book, I'm not the only one, right?
And by sharing it, you're being your authentic you, which is what is connecting you to the
Yeah.
woman that you're sharing it with.
Yeah.
So it's important.
Yes.
Did you do any inner child work? Because that you didn't really talk about that a lot in the
Yeah.
book.
Well, there was a lot of work that went in that time period.
Right. Because that can also be very useful with the kind of experience that you have.
Yeah. And so I do have a course, and I do teach a lot of that in my course. So the book is kind of like the foundation. It is my personal story, and then walking people through the exceptional formula, which is really just to help them on the step-by-step process to kind of open up their eyes, because I feel like we need a foundation. And then in my course, we go deeper into inner child work, releasing emotions. Beliefs are really, really important. That's something that I didn't realize, and I share in my book a little bit in the spiritual chapter, is those limiting beliefs. We think it's the world or all our circumstances that's preventing us from getting what we want, right, in life, when really it's ourselves. We're sabotaging ourselves. We're believing things that are not true, even though here we think we believe one thing. It's what we believe here
Right.
that is taking us in the direction that we're going. And so really helping people um, find those limiting beliefs, and what I call flipping. I have the penny, flipping it over to
Yeah,
the
I love
empowering
it.
beliefs.
You put it right in the book. I love that.
Yep. So,
And you use that through the whole beginning of the book, what the penny means and all the different ways to view the penny. And for some reason, little girls are always growing up thinking they're not enough, that they're not enough. Doesn't matter what kind of loving family they came from, they grow up thinking they're not enough.
yeah.
And that haunts them until they come to the belief and they change that programming that they can be anything that they want to be.
Yeah. And that really is it. Like you said, we have been programmed, right? And I'm not sure where that program occurs, if it's, how much of it's built in, how much of it's what we've seen. I believe a lot of it, again, goes back to the examples that we have. And so when I realized that my own personal limiting beliefs, right, that's what my daughter saw, my life that I was living. And so that, even though I may be saying with words all the right things to her, if that's not what she's visually seeing, then she's building her own limiting beliefs. And those limiting beliefs are happening, some say the first 5 years, some say the first 7, some say the first 10, I'm going to throw out 10 there, but those first 10 years are so important on how their beliefs are formed, that, not to put the fear on moms, because I know moms are like, oh, I feel like I'm doing all the wrong things. But if you are living example, right, that's what they're going to see. That's what they're going to start to believe. I always laughed back in the day when I first became a physical therapist. Smoking was still like in the hospitals and stuff, and you'd see the doctors and especially respiratory therapists were always outside smoking, and then they would go in and they tell their patients, right, like smoking is going to kill you. But that's what they were doing, and outside or in the doctor's office rooms, and stuff. And so, the patients would be like, well, if it's not killing my doctor, it's not killing the respiratory therapist, I'm okay. Um, and really, it goes back to that with our children. If we're saying one thing and we're doing another, their beliefs are built on what they see.
Sticking. It's
Yeah.
not what you're hearing.
Yeah. So even though it's still important to tell them all the right things too.
Right. No, actually, it's all important.
Yeah.
And the mindset that they can develop for themselves and how they see their future and the way they look at life, and certainly the gratitude and all of that impacts their lives.
Right. Well, Cheryl, one of the things that I really figured out on my journey is I was really good. I still am. I'm really good at seeing things in other people. Right.
Oh, I think we
So,
all are.
right. We always can tell people what they need to do to make things better. Right. But for ourselves, it's a different story. And so for me, as a physical therapist for so many years, I'd have patients and I would talk a lot about this upper area here being stressed. And, they'd have neck problems and stuff. And we would talk and they were like, well, I'm not stressed. And I'm like, the stories you're telling me, those are stories of stress, right? But again, I couldn't see it in myself. So one of the things that I really want women today, men too, but women today to understand is that if you find yourself, this was me, fighting with your children, right? Fighting with your spouse, fighting with your coworkers. And when I say fighting, I'm not just making this, I'm talking about the words coming out of her mouth, arguing, resisting, those types of things. That is a sign that you are stressed. Also, for people to understand when people are doing that to you, to realize, what can I do to help this person not be so stressed? Because I know for me now, my husband, he helps me do so many things around the house. He helps cook. My kids have learned how to cook. Like, we work together as a team instead of it being an all mom, super mom show, right? But they now also realize, because we've had that discussion, that if we're getting into a fight, right? Who's starting the fight? Number one, if it's mom, mom's stressed. Like, why is mom stressed in the first place? Is it because mom's asked everybody to do something and they're not doing it? And not to blame that on them, but for them to understand that I'm getting up to here with it, right? And for me to understand the same, if my child is waking up and the first thing that's coming out of their mouth is they're fighting me on something, my question is, are they getting enough sleep? Are they getting the right food? Are they getting enough water? Like, me asking myself, instead of getting upset at their behavior, asking myself, are they stressed? Because that's usually that's what the cause is, right? Is the stress.
That you touched upon is, as a family, you talk about this.
Yes.
You come to recognize the signs, but as a result of recognizing the signs, you don't just let them go on. You actually had robust conversations about this
Yes.
so that the family works better, because everybody's open about talking about what's going on in their lives, their bodies, their stress levels. And I'm imagining that each of you has learned ways to release the stress that,
Exactly.
after the conversation, then creates a much more positive family environment.
Right.
So many people don't want to talk about these things, which just
Right.
boxes it up and increases the stress.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, when we can have that conversation that you are in a stressed state right now, like this isn't the time to have the conversation, right? Again, like, what can we do to help? Sometimes it's so funny how simple as you wake up, you're dehydrated, right? If you've been up for 30 minutes to an hour and you haven't, like, when they're upset, have it just giving them a glass of water, you know, to bring their body into a state that they're able to handle whatever is going on in this world. And because we do live in a stressful world, but we don't have to take on all that stress. And that stress is what really is causing us problems. And I share in my book that I had gone from the fight stage to the flight. I had everything I'd ever wanted in this life, and all I could think about was running away, not just from my family and my, circumstances, what was going on, but I even wanted to run away from myself. And that's impossible to do, right? You can't run wherever you go, your body's going with you.
You go there too.
You
Right.
go there too. And then I felt guilty and I didn't know who to talk to. Like, having that feeling again goes back to, well, it's just normal, let's put you on an antidepressant. Well, I didn't feel depressed, right? I just felt like I couldn't handle what was going on around me, and it was because I was in a stressed state. And even though I could see that in other people, I couldn't see it in myself. And so when I started working with coaches and my naturopath and different things, and realizing, oh, well, that is normal if you're in a stressed state. Feeling those ways is normal if you're in a stressed state. But no one told me, hey, when you're in a stressed state, there's things that you can do to help yourself get out of that stress state.
I actually want to ask you, you talk about breathing. I agree
Mhm.
with that. In fact, there's a new book out on breathing that's brilliant by
Yeah.
Nesbitt, where he considers it as expensive, as important to health as stress and um, food and sleep.
Yeah.
But which do you do a particular breathing exercise?
Yeah. So actually, I don't know if you've heard of heart math.
Oh yeah, actually I've studied heart math.
Yeah. So I do a lot of breathing that's going to help bring my HRV into a good higher rate, right? So that my vagal tone is higher. So I actually do a lot, but the 5-5, just inhale for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, is the main one that I do on every morning when I wake up. And it's kind of funny because I always hear people say, well, like, you would die if you didn't breathe. And I'm like, yeah, but like all things in life, when we're intentional, it changes things.
Right.
And so I have a little inner balance that helps me be able to see where I'm at on that. I love tools. I love apps. There's a lot of free apps on the phone that I've done in the past that help you with breathing. I think everybody finds what works best for them. Some people need to do like box breathing, deep diaphragmatic breathing. There's so many different techniques. And I tell people, find what works best for you. For me, the 5-on-5, and I like to think of waves, the waves coming in and the waves going out on a 5 second. That really helps me get into a great place. I have found, for me, it takes a good 5 to 7 minutes before I actually get into a really good state. For some people, they can do it in a minute or two. Again,
Yeah,
I
I
think
can
it's
do it
about
in a
practice.
minute, but I use Dr. Andrew Wiles, and I know
Mhm.
it works because I used to have very high pulse and very high blood pressure after driving an hour in LA traffic to my functional doctor's office. And
Yeah.
now I do the Dr. Andrew Wealth while I'm driving out there, and I have the best pulse, the best blood pressure of any of her patients.
Yeah.
So I do that whenever I do it when I get up. I do it twice a day so that my stress never goes to chronic, because I can't afford to get my cortisol that low again. But I do other things too. I might just stand up next to my chair and bounce to
Right.
let the blood go to my brain and to let the top off my chronic stress. But I also have found, have you ever seen this little sucker?
Mm-mm. No, I have not.
This is called a belly button wand. My husband and I use it on each other sometimes. It
Yeah.
was, it's a towel wand, and the theory is that your belly button was where you were born, and
Mm-hmm.
you can impact your vagus nerve and
Yeah.
every organ in your body through your belly button. So you
Mm-hmm.
just put it in and you jiggle it in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do this for 3 minutes, it resets your parasympathetic nervous system and
Yeah.
lets all the stress down. And we went to UCLA and watched the head of neurology, who was poo-pooing it, take brain waves of people before and after the belly wand. And after the belly wand, they were completely calm, and he was
Yeah.
blown away. So this is a great tool that is also very loving to do with your partner.
Yeah.
So it's another great way to let go of the stress.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just
And
show
that's the thing. There are so many. There are so many tools out there. And I know for me, I'm one of those people that like to find the right thing, right? So I even say this in my book at one point is I was looking for the one thing, like the perfect thing, the right thing
yeah,
to fix everything, right? And what I found is as we grow, like new tools come about that are going to help us get to that next level. So when people ask, I'm like, hey, just start breathing intentionally. Like just breathe in and breathe out. And then as after you get that, let's talk about counting our breath, right? Let's talk about some of these other things. And that leads to meditation, right? So there's different levels that we can get to. And in my book, I try and be very simple. Like, let's just start with the foundation. When people tell me, well, do you know of anything that helps with headaches? I'm like, first thing I say is, are you dehydrated? Let's start with something as simple as that, right?
something else that I did not know for headaches, that another health coach that I interviewed said,
Mhm.
I put a little grain of pink Himalayan salt under my tongue,
Yeah.
and that shebang took care of my headache. I was
Yeah.
amazed.
Yeah. I mean, it is amazing. And that goes back to you. Do you know? I think this is really funny, but do you know why lemonade began in the first place?
No,
So, have you ever had a glass of lemonade and it makes you thirsty?
yeah,
And what do you want to do?
drink more water.
Drink more water. It was a way to get when people would come in from farming, they would give them a glass of lemonade. It would help hydrate them, right? It would also make them thirsty and want more liquid. And it's so funny how,
Also good for them in the water.
yes, exactly. I do love it. My lemonade that I make, we add a little bit of Himalayan salt to it or real salt to it. So yeah, I mean, it's those little things like that that people, when we think about the past, like why was lemonade so popular? Now we have the Gatorades and all these things, but something as simple as real lemons, right?
Real lemons and water are so much healthier for the body than Gatorade is, which is loaded with chemicals.
A load of chemicals and loaded of sugar and a little maple syrup or a little bit of honey in those. Those work very good and antibacterially. They work very good for your minerals because you're adding natural minerals into your body, which is good if you're sweating and stuff. Like you don't necessarily need all the other junk that they try and sell us today. Something
Well, and they
natural.
hook you. They're actually addictive, those things.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like you said, I mean, I love the little belly button thing. I'll have to look into that. But there are so many things. One of my tools that I use a lot
You'll
is,
find whatever works for you.
yeah, well, one of my tools is essential oils. I mean, essential oils are a great tool. And the truth of the matter is, because they smell good, I want to breathe, right? So that's typically how I start my morning is with an oil because I want to breathe it in and I want to let it out. And even though I'm like using two tools, right? And then I have my inner balance, which was with heart math. That's like a third tool that I've added to it to see what oils, what breathing patterns work best for me.
I use lavender in my bath at night.
Yes.
I have some salt, which
Yeah.
makes me fall asleep like that. I am asleep almost before my head hits the pillow.
Yeah. So I have a funny story to share about, we're talking about being examples. So one of the things I did do for many years was I would take a nice hot bath in the evening when my husband would come home. I knew like I needed that to survive, just to get away and to do that. And I started adding Epsom salt and oils and stuff after I started my healing journey. But my daughter, who at the time was 11, like perfect age, right? She took baths before that for cleaning purposes, but she started taking her Epsom salt baths with her oils and stuff as a way of helping after she danced, because she would get really sore muscles and stuff from dancing. And then it became, as life got a little stressful, she started taking those baths and stuff. So we kind of call her the bath queen now, because that's what she knows, that's what she needs. And even though I only take a bath usually in the evening, like before bed, she'll come home and take a bath in the middle of the day. Like, she knows for her, it's a way to go. Well, my son, my youngest son is 14 now. You don't usually think of a 14-year-old, almost 6 foot tall kid, taking a nice Epsom salt bath, but he's found that it works for him after golf. And I thought, this is because of things that I'm choosing to do that my family are seeing are options, right? There's lots of other options that they can do, but little brother gets to see big sister and mom do these things that's helping bring down the stress, bring down the anxiety, bring down muscular pain, all the things
in their life, which is important. If I don't
yeah.
take my Epsom salt baths, my magnesium does not hold.
Yeah, and most people don't realize that stress takes a magnesium, like it's eating that magnesium away. So yeah, we do the Epsom salt. We do several different types of supplements, because there's all kinds of different magnesium. So a lot of us need different types to keep that up if you're going through any type
We're
of
not
stress.
getting the magnesium from our food that we were when I was a kid.
Exactly.
Not rotating our soil and our plants the same way.
Yeah.
So everyone should check their magnesium levels, because it's 500 different functions in the body.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Especially with all the heart disease we have today, magnesium is so, so important. I know a lot of times they talk about potassium, but potassium and magnesium work together.
Yeah, and
Again,
they without each other.
Yeah, they can't. And most people don't realize that. And I don't really know why. I think it's becoming more talked about today than it was, even 5 years ago. But yeah, that's one of the first things that and people are like, an Epsom salt bath. I'm like, it should be the first prescription the doctor gives when a person is given any type of issue. Take an Epsom salt bath, right? Like, this is 30 minutes of relaxation, 20 minutes, if you want to take a 20-minute bath, but type of relaxation, you're getting that magnesium, you're going to sleep better. You're probably going to go to the bathroom better. Like all these.
Add lavender to it, which makes me sleep even better.
Yep. And less stress.
On oil, because I have the world's driest skin. So that
Yes.
that takes away from the hot water on my body. So that
Yeah.
adds back the oils that I need.
Yeah.
No,
And it really is. It's something as simple as that people think. I know I was one of these people 10 plus years ago. That's too simple to really work. So I'm not even going to try it. And I just tell people.
A lot of the things you and I do are simple, but
Yes.
incredibly impactful.
Yes. I have a lady that she even says it in my book, but it's the small things that make the big difference. And so often people are looking for, as I said, I was one of those people, the one big thing. Like, if I could just do one big thing and it's going to like make this big difference. And it's like, it can't be one big thing, because we're multidimensional people. We need these little things that we can just fit into our day, right? And our night, prepare us. And it's like you said, it checks mark all these different things. Like, well, now you have less stress. Now you sleep better. Now you go to the bathroom better. Now you do this, and this. All these issues you had are now taken care of with one thing that you did.
The bathroom better part too.
Yeah.
That kind of amazed me. And then it hit me, milk of magnesia. It makes sense that making sure my magnesium is right keeps me right there.
Yeah. People often ask, well, how do you know if you've got too much? Well, if you're on the toilet and you're going too much, that's a problem, right?
If you go too much, then your body tells you, and then you just back off of it a little bit.
And now you're cleaned out. Isn't that great?
Right.
You get to start from a fresh spot. Now you know how much. Yeah. So yeah, it really is the simple things. And I think that we complicate things way too much. Let's complicate things. Let's, do all the things that really don't matter and not do the things that do. and get yourself into a lot of trouble, right? And then you're like, oh, really? If I had been doing these things, like I may have not had to go through that path that I went through. Um, but that's just part of life, and we're never too old, right? To
Oh,
learn new tricks, to learn
you are
new
never
tools.
too old to adopt healthy habits.
No. So, yeah, I think that Cheryl, I love the stories that you're having put on your podcast that people are being able to share. I appreciate you allowing me to share my story, because I will say the women that have contacted me that have read my story, especially the ones that knew me or have known me through my life and not realized the things that I kept hidden because I wanted to be perfect. That's part of normal, right? We just want to pretend like everything's okay, that we're going to do all the things perfect. And to realize that no, I'm not perfect. Though that is always,
We're
in the
never
back of
gonna
my
be
head.
perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a work in progress.
We're all a work in progress, and I'm not there. I kept thinking it took me 10 years to write my book because I thought I'll finish my book when I got it all figured out. And the truth of the matter is that is part of my journey on this earth, is figuring out day to day how I can live out my purpose, how I can live the life I was put on this earth to live. And again, going back to my figuring out my sugar addiction, a lot of that has to deal with the things that we do wrong, right? The little mistakes that we make, if we learn from them, we're growing, right?
Well, and
If
it's the
we
things
try
that
to
go wrong
ignore,
in us that give us our mission eventually.
exactly, and the pains that we've gone through, that can be our purpose, right? So
Right.
instead of looking at it as all this, going back to gratitude, instead of looking at it all as, oh my gosh, why did I have to go through that? Why did I have to deal with that? Why? How about what can I do with that today? I can't
Right.
change the
How did
past.
that make me grow and where did that lead me?
Yeah,
Because there is a silver lining in everything, no
yeah,
matter how horrific it was at the time.
yeah,
There's a silver lining because there's growth. My growth across my entire life has come from the most difficult times of my life, not from the
exactly.
easy ones.
You are today who you are because of what you went through, but you don't have to stay there, right? You
Oh,
can continue to grow from it and become who it is you were created to be every day. I mean, I tell my kids, like, if I go through the day without having learned something, whether it be in a book, on a podcast, from someone, or from my own personal choices that I make, right? Eating something and going, oh, I don't feel so good. Like that was not a good choice. Let's learn from that. Let's not do that again, right?
well, and
Um,
I have 18 food sensitivities and I
yep,
still have flares. And
yep,
I'm pretty vigilant about staying away from the things that cause the flares, but they still happen. So every morning when I get up, I ask myself, how do you feel today?
yep,
And then I get quiet to listen for a minute. And if I'm not feeling right, then I go through my head. What did I do yesterday that's making me feel slightly off today or really off, which does happen on an occasion? You have to have conversations with yourself and be aware
yeah,
because that's how you grow, you change, you adjust, and you maintain an
yeah,
exceptional body and exceptional health.
yes, I agree.
So, and I want to tell you why I started the podcast. Half of them are these stories, which I'm loving. And it's because before COVID, when I was speaking locally, people would come up to me and say, it's all fine and well that you did this, but I can't.
Mhm.
I either got bad genetics, which now we know habits run in families. You don't get the same diseases because they're in your genetics. You get to turn that light switch on or off. Or just because you made these changes and it made you come back to wellness doesn't mean I can do that. And it occurred to me that if I started a podcast, I wanted part of it just me talking about what I learned about health, and the other health part talking about people like you who also had high health crises, owned it, changed their lifestyle, and came back to health because I want to give people hope. Wherever they are does not mean that's where they have to be.
Exactly. I
If
totally
they
agree.
own it, if they own it and they dig in and they want to improve their health and
Right,
live the exceptional life, which I
right.
love, they
Well,
can do that.
one of the things I say, and I use the penny a lot, as you know from reading my book, but Penny is also change, right? We call this change. And we like change, right? We like some money, we like those things, but often in life we want something different. We just don't want to change. We see like this is over here what I want. But when it comes to making the changes, we say the excuses, which will really go back to limiting beliefs of I can't change. I've tried before and nothing changes. So I might as well just do this, what I've known, right?
And this is my lot. I'm going to feel this bad.
This is just how I'm going to
Or I'm
feel.
going to go to the doctor and get a magic pill. Magic pill
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
So for me, I had joint pain from as a kid, like I remember always waking up with my legs hurting. I had joint pain. I'm 50 years old now, right? I started this, what I call my health journey of really working on my health when I was 39 years old. I rarely ever have joint pain now. You cannot tell me that it's not the changes that I've made, right? That has affected my joint pain. And you can't tell me that people only have joint pain because they're getting older, because I had it in my first 40 years of life and I've lived the last 10 years with rarely having it. Same thing with headaches. I took ibuprofen every day from 13 to 39 because of headaches and from cramps and all these different things that I was told was normal. And by making these changes that I share in my book, I'm not going to say I never have a headache because I had one yesterday. Okay.
Right. I still get them on occasion.
I rarely have a headache. And just like you said, I walk through the process. Why did I have a headache yesterday? Right.
I do.
And I can pretty much pinpoint where that headache came from. Okay. For me, food is very, I have to be very careful of where I eat, what I eat, without getting a headache. Okay. And for me, a lot of times I can eat at home all the time, right? If I eat at home all the time, I rarely ever get a headache. But those headaches, right, affect other things too, which is kind of like this whole little spiral down and everything. So I really have to be careful in the choices that I make. But those are some things I have known. Like this isn't something I learned in the last 10 years. When I was in high school, my mom and I would go to this Mexican restaurant to eat, and I always knew to take my ibuprofen because I knew every Sunday when I ate here, I would have a headache. And at the time, I didn't think about the fact that I had another choice. Like we could eat somewhere else, right? Or we could go home, right? I just thought my answer was in the ibuprofen. And what I like to share in my book is so often we have more choices than we think, right? And so now I know that by going out to eat, there may be the chance that I'm going to have a headache. And what did I do last night? As soon as I got home from my son's golf tournament, I took an Epsom salt bath. I did my oils. I did my self-care that I could do, right? And today I do not have a headache. I never had to go and add more toxins to my body to get rid of the headache, because just like you said, I had to look and go, okay, this headache to me is no longer this terrible bad thing. This is a sign. This is a, hey, Shawna, be aware. Like there was some reason why
your body
you got this headache. Let's learn from it and let's move forward, right? I had a headache because there was too many toxins in my body. What can I do to let go of these toxins? Do those things. Headache is gone. I get to move on, right? I won't choose the same thing that I ate before, or I won't go to the same place or whatever, or I need to know what my consequence is going to be.
Right. Well, and I don't eat the standard American diet, which means I'm somewhat limited of where I can eat outside when I don't do my own cooking. We have a second home in Sedona. There's 15 restaurants there. I can walk in off the street and find food. But in LA, we have to go long distances to find that many restaurants. And I have to be vigilant before I go there. So people will say to me, don't you feel deprived? Heck no. I was deprived when food was making me sick. Exactly. So now being vigilant, calling the chef ahead of time, finding out if he is doing farm to table vegetables. What can he cook to me if I go to his restaurant? I'm not shy about doing any of that anymore because that's how I feel great. And now that I feel good, I am not giving it up, not for anything. So yeah, you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And there are ways to do it.
And again, goes back to that inner child. Cheryl, so often the things that we would do for our kids, we won't do for ourselves. If our child was as sick as we felt, right? If our child felt that way, if our child was sick, to what ends would we go to help them? Yet we won't do it for ourselves. And typically it goes back to, are we truly loving ourselves?
I don't even think we think about doing it for ourselves. We have to retrain our brains that it's important that we do that for ourselves the same way we would for a child.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
As we are now parenting ourselves, we must treat ourselves the way we would our own. And when I got that mindset, not only do I want to treat my kids that way, I need to treat myself that way.
right.
It changed things. And then again, I hope that my children will then do that same thing for
And I
themselves.
bet it made your entire family work much better as a family unit because you were taking care of you. They were observing you taking care of you. So they were taking care of them. So it's a much more healthy, loving environment. Not that
Right.
it wasn't before, but
It's kind of funny because this last weekend, my oldest son, he's going to be 25 in May. He lives out on his own. He has a roommate, and him and another friend and his roommate came to Easter at my mom's, and we got talking about food. My oldest likes to eat food. He is a 6'5", 200 plus pounds, and stuff. But I taught him those last few years that he was at home was that part of my journey and stuff, and we started making food from scratch. And one of his friends said, "Oh yeah, I went over to his house one day and he made chicken nuggets." Well, most people would think chicken nuggets like he got a frozen bag of chicken nuggets that have all the things, right, and stuck them in the oven or whatever. And I said, "Were they homemade?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, that's what I mean." Because he takes real chicken breast, right? And he puts good unbleached flour, we use spelt flour, like he uses eggs, like he uses real food to cook real food.
yeah,
And a side of guacamole
quality
and
better.
this. And and it's so funny because for my son, that's just normal now, right?
Right.
For others, it's, the bag. And so we got into this whole discussion about different things that, oh yeah, well, my kid can make Hot Pockets. Well, I'm thinking my kid can too, but my kid makes them from scratch,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, and the thing is it's just teaching them, right? It's just teaching them. It doesn't take any longer. It doesn't, I mean, it may take a few more minutes, but this kid is coming
It's
back saying,
working.
"Your son made me dinner," right? Like he was able to make dinner. And for me to know that my kids can go off, even here at home, my two that are still at home, like they cook at home, right? But that they can go off and cook for themselves healthy food and not to have to rely on fast food or, um, all the processed food and all the things. But if we're not teaching them at home, they're not going, it's not going
Yeah.
to be easy later
And in
on.
fact, I'm very grateful that I was eating all the crap and the processed food and the processed frozen food and the fast food. But when I got sick, my mother cooked. So it was not, I was not inclined as a single person living alone to cook for myself, but I started cooking for myself, but I knew how to do it
Right.
because I had grown up doing it with her and
Right.
how important that ended up being because it became, I can cook a whole dinner like a fast order cook that's only loaded with quality ingredients.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that much
It
longer. It would
doesn't
take me
take,
longer to jump in the car and go buy fast food and bring it home.
I know, it's so funny. Yeah, the time takes you to call to order the pizza, go pick up the pizza or have it delivered. Like you could make that at home on your own, healthy, right? Like,
Right.
but we don't know it unless we do it.
Right.
And sometimes we
And
need to
there is, I
help
will
people
admit,
walk
a
into that
rhythm.
process.
There's a rhythm that comes from
Yeah.
cooking that in the beginning you don't have, but it
Yeah.
doesn't take that long to get it. And
Yeah.
then shebang, you can put a wonderful dinner together with quality ingredients that feed
Exactly.
your body everything it needs.
Yeah. And you get to choose what is in it.
Right, right. You get to control what you're putting in your body,
Yeah.
which is
And you
so
feel so much better. And I think that's the thing. If people realized how good they could feel, right? Is that the name of your book, Feel Good? I think we
it
talked about
feels
that,
good to
right?
feel good. Yeah, both of my
It,
books are around that.
it does. And when I would go to the doctor, I would just say, I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. And I would just be told this is normal. And I want to tell people, I want to shout to the world and say, how I was feeling is not the only way I can feel because I now feel different. I feel better. I feel good. Are there days, like you said, of course, and a lot of times I find it's if I'm not doing the
Very,
things that my
very
body needs,
few now.
right? But it's not daily. Before it was every single day. And I had to take something every single day just to get through a few hours of feeling a little bit better, but it wasn't fixing anything.
And I don't think people realize all those over-the-counter medications all do harm.
Yeah.
I was allergic to aspirin, so I took Tylenol for everything. They
Yeah.
now know that it's far harder on the liver than they ever realized. So where do I have issues? I have spent a lot of time bringing my liver back to health because that impacted it
Yeah.
by taking so much of it my whole life.
And see, I was probably so toxic as a child, I couldn't even take Tylenol because my body would regurgitate it up as soon as I would take it. So I took I thought, like, thank the Lord, when I was 13, I remember when Motrin was no longer a prescription drug and was on the counter, right? Well, if it's on the counter, it's safe. When it was a prescription, like, maybe not as safe as we think, but if it's over the counter. And so, I bought the big bottles, great value. It would come with a big bottle and a little bottle. I kept the little bottle in my purse. The big bottle was at home and a couple in my pocket at all times because I thought that was the answer. And unfortunately, a doctor told me at the age of 21, just take ibuprofen every day. And then I later found out, did you know there's actually a max amount that they recommend for your lifetime? And I figured, okay, probably by the time I was 14 or 15, I'd already taken the max load. Here I was 39 years old. And my body was so toxic, remember, from all the things I was doing on a daily basis, whether it was what I was putting on my skin, putting on my hair, putting inside my body. Because of the way I felt, my joints felt, my cramps, my headaches, I would take, the ibuprofen, add more toxins. I'd wake up the next morning and I'm up to here again. It was just a constant
I
battle.
follow functional medicine, which is all about when your toxic load goes over the top.
Yeah.
That's when chronic illness begins. And
Yeah.
that's heart disease, that's autoimmune disease, that's cancer. So being cognizant of where all the toxins are in your life becomes critical. And I'll tell you, once you start to feel good, you don't want to give it up.
No.
Even if I only lose a little tiny bit, I'm constantly searching for where did I shift? Because I want that great feeling back again. I want all my feel good hormones working the way they're supposed to.
Me too, girl.
Yeah. So, here we're coming to the end. I want you to, if you could tell the audience anything from all the things that you've learned that you want them to take away from you, what would it be?
I would say that when you start loving yourself, it becomes really easy to do these things that seem at this moment really hard to do. And really, they are simple things. For me, going for a walk, right? Like, at the time, I thought there was not enough time. If you cannot find 30 minutes in your life to take care of yourself, you are not loving yourself. And so, if there was one thing I could share, is find whoever it is you need to help you get to that place if you can't do it on your own. And for me, I thought I had to do everything on my own, right? Because I was perfect. Didn't want anybody to know that I may need some help. And so my book helps people walk through a process to start doing those steps. But that doesn't mean you might not need some help. And if you need some help, whether it's Cheryl or it's me or somebody else out there, we are here for you to help.
When I got sick, and thank God and to detox off of sugar, honest to God, you need somebody who is there to back you up, because you need the support from somebody outside of yourself so that you get through it. But once you get through it, it's freedom. You have food freedom. It's a completely new game.
Yeah.
I couldn't even believe when I went grocery shopping, I could smell it in the store and it was appalling.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to get the help that you need. You are not expected to do it all on your own.
Yeah. So that would be my recommendation. Love yourself and get the help that you need to do that.
Great. Well, thank you. We've had a great conversation. I'm sure everybody who's listened to it will love it. And I appreciate it, and I'm delighted. It was fun to see that you approached it from such a different point of view as mine was. I'm much more pragmatic in terms of how I approached it. But it is, we come to all the same conclusions. So our books really work together well in tandem, which is wonderful.
Awesome.
So thank you.
I'm excited to read your book. Thank you, Cheryl.
So fun conversation. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on my show, and I've loved it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.